Clara Holt read it twice. She had been thinking about alpacas since January, which was when she had found the 1932 textile trade report at the Dodge City Library during the week the North Field was too wet to work, and she had taken herself to the reading room with a notebook and spent 3 days going through the agricultural and trade periodicals in the reference section. The report had a single paragraph on domestic fiber supply gaps that she had copied into the notebook verbatim. Alpaca fiber. Domestic production essentially non-existent. All commercial supply from Peru and Bolivia. Import reliability severely disrupted since 1929. Domestic producers would face minimal competition and premium pricing. She had written below it in her own hand, "Find buyer first, then find animals." She found the buyer first. A letter to the Kansas City textile buyer the report had mentioned, a man named Ashford who supplied fiber to 2 Kansas City ateliers and 1 in St. Louis, produced a response in 3 days. Ashford had been trying to locate domestic alpaca supply for 2 years. He would pay $4 per pound for blanket-grade fiber from a reliable domestic source. He wanted to know how much she could produce and when. She wrote back and said she would have an answer by June. In March, she answered the advertisement. The importer's name was Graves. He operated out of a warehouse in Wichita that smelled of hay and international paperwork, and he had 3 Huacaya alpacas he had brought from Peru the previous November on a speculative import order that had not found buyers because Kansas livestock buyers in the 4th year of the Depression were not buying anything speculative. He was asking $25. She offered $18. He accepted, which told her she had offered more than the floor but less than the ceiling, which was where she had intended to land. She loaded the 3 alpacas into her truck bed in the wooden crates Graves had built for their original transport, a wether and 2 females, correctly selected for a fiber operation starting from scratch, the male wether docile and manageable in ways an intact male would not be. She drove back to Dodge City with 3 animals from the Peruvian Altiplano and a letter from a Kansas City buyer in her coat pocket and a calculation in the notebook that said, if the fiber yields came in at the lower end of what the breed literature described, she would cover her operating costs in year 1 and turn the operation profitable in year 2. The county's opinion formed before she reached the gate. This was the specific quality of information flow in Ford County. The livestock importer told someone at the Wichita sale barn, who told someone on the drive back, who mentioned it at the co-op in Dodge City before Clara had unloaded the crates. By Tuesday, the opinion was settled. Strange animals from South America on a wheat farm in the 4th year of a drought. The county had the specific enthusiasm for this story that communities brought to the unusual decisions of women who were running farms alone and making choices nobody had endorsed. Webb Alderman was at the west fence when she pulled in. He looked at the crates in the truck bed, at the faces visible through the wire, the alpaca's long necks, the large dark eyes with the horizontal pupils, the dense cream-colored fiber that made each animal look like something between a small camel and a very opinionated cloud. "Alpacas," she said. He was quiet for the amount of time he was quiet when he was working through information. "From Peru," he said. "Huacaya alpacas. 1 wether, 2 females. The wether is for fiber. The females are for fiber and for expanding the herd through breeding." She went to the tailgate. "Help me get them to the pen." He helped. The pen she had built for them that spring was correct for the species, shelter from wind and wet on the north and west sides, open to the south for passive solar warmth in winter, a clean water supply, and the half-acre of pasture that 3 alpacas required for adequate grazing. She had read everything available on Huacaya management before she built it, including a breeding manual from a Peruvian agricultural extension document that she had ordered by mail from a university library in January, and that had arrived in February and had been the most useful document she had encountered on the subject. She put the 3 alpacas in the pen. They stood in a cluster and looked at the Kansas landscape with the large, dark eyes and the horizontal pupils of mountain animals encountering plains for the first time. After approximately 4 minutes, the wether, a pale cream animal, fiber-dense and even from shoulder to hip, walked to the water trough, assessed it, and drank. The two females watched him do this and then followed. Clara wrote in the notebook, "Settled faster than expected. Good sign." Before we find out what Clara's 3 alpacas become, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. This channel reaches people across the country and across the world, and we love hearing from you. And if someone shared this with you, hit subscribe now. We release new stories every week, and you won't want to miss what comes next for Clara and her unusual farm. Webb came to the west fence on Tuesday, which was when he came. He looked at the alpacas in the pen with the patience he applied to all unfamiliar things, not rushing to a conclusion, reading what was actually in front of him before deciding what he thought about it. "They're not spitting," he said. "They spit when they're stressed or establishing hierarchy," she said. "They've settled. When alpacas spit at you, it means you've done something wrong in the handling." He looked at the wether, who was grazing the east section of the pasture with the methodical circuit of an animal that was learning its new environment. "What do you do with them?" "Fiber," she said. "Once a year, late May, before the summer heat. The fiber grows continuously from shearing to shearing. 1 year's growth on a well-managed animal produces 3 to 5 pounds of raw fiber, which yields 2 to 4 pounds of blanket grade after skirting." He was quiet. Skirting. Removing the coarser fiber from the belly and legs. The fiber from the blanket, the back and sides, is the premium grade. Everything else has secondary markets. She looked at the notebook she was holding. The blanket fiber runs 18 to 22 microns on a good wakaya. That's finer than standard merino, and it contains no lanolin, which means people with wool sensitivities can wear it directly against the skin. That's the specific quality the Kansas City buyer is paying $4 a pound for. He looked at her. $4 per pound was a number that required a moment. "You have a buyer," he said. "Since February," she said. "I found him before I found the animals." He looked at the alpacas, at the notebook, at Clara with the pale gray eyes and the pale gold braid and the specific expression of a woman who has organized the situation before anyone else in the county knew there was a situation to organize. He went back to the fence post. She went back to the alpacas. The county's ongoing commentary was delivered through the usual channels over the following weeks. Walt Hensley at the co-op said he supposed she'd find out soon enough whether Peruvian animals survived a Kansas summer, which was a reasonable concern she had already addressed by confirming with the breed literature that wakaya alpacas, being native to altitudes where temperatures fluctuated dramatically between day and night, were significantly more temperature tolerant than most domestic livestock. The county extension agent came out in June, not to assess the operation, but out of professional curiosity, and spent an hour asking Clara questions that she answered from the notebook. He went back to his office and wrote a paragraph about the visit in the county agricultural bulletin. The paragraph was factual and did not editorialize. It included the fiber price Ashford had offered. 2 other farmers called the extension office the following week. Clara noted this in her notebook without comment. The first shearing came in late May. She had practiced the shearing technique on one of the females in April, a dry run, no actual shearing, just the restraint and positioning protocol, because alpaca shearing was different from sheep shearing in ways that mattered. Alpacas were shorn in a specific body position, lying on their sides on a clean canvas, legs secured with soft ties to prevent sudden movement that could injure the animal or the shearer. The restraint position looked alarming to people who had not seen it before, but was not distressing to a correctly handled alpaca. She had read this in the Peruvian manual and confirmed it with the practice run. The actual shearing took 2 hours for 3 animals. The wether produced 4 pounds of raw fiber, above the breed average, which she noted. The females produced 3.5 pounds each. Total raw fiber from the first shearing, 11 pounds. After skirting, removing the coarser belly and leg fiber, 8.5 pounds of blanket grade remained. She packaged the fiber in the clean cloth bags she had prepared for the purpose and shipped it to Ashford in Kansas City with the fiber diameter measurements she had taken from each animal before shearing. Ashford wrote back within the week. The fiber had graded at 19 microns average, the upper range of Wakaya quality, finer than he had received from any of his previous sources. He wanted everything she could produce. He wanted to discuss expanding the supply. He asked how large the herd could become by the following spring. She wrote back and told him about the 2 females who would be bred in November for crias the following spring, and about the additional animals she intended to purchase with the first fiber payment. She told him the herd could reach 8 producing animals by the following shearing season and 12 by the year after that. She did not tell him the animals were not for sale, because Ashford had not asked to buy them. He was a buyer who understood the fiber business, which meant he understood that a fiber producer who sold her breeding stock was a fiber producer who had ended her production capacity. He was not going to ask. Webb was at the west fence on the Tuesday after the fiber payment arrived. She showed him the check. Not because she needed his reaction. She had known what the check was going to be before it arrived, because she had done the calculation in February and the calculation had been correct. But because he had been at the fence every Tuesday since April and had been watching the operation develop from the crates in the truck bed to the first shearing to the packaged fiber going out on the freight, and it seemed like information that belonged to more than one person. He looked at the check for a long moment. 8.5 pounds, he said. At $4 per pound, she said. He was quiet. Clara, she waited. The additional animals, he said, for next spring. Where are you getting them? There's a second importer in Kansas City who brought a small group from Peru last year and has been unable to sell them. I've been corresponding with him since March. She looked at the notebook. 5 females, all bred, crias due in spring. I can have them here by October if the payment covers the purchase price, which it does with enough remaining for the winter feed. He was quiet again. You've been corresponding with a second importer since March, he said, while you were setting up the first 3 animals. While I was determining whether the first 3 animals were going to produce at the yield I projected, she said. They did, so the second purchase makes sense. He looked at the west fence. At the alpacas in the pen, who had observed the Tuesday fence conversation with the horizontal pupil attention they brought to all activity at the pen perimeter. The weather was in the shade of the north shelter. The 2 females were in the east pasture. All 3 were calm, which was the specific quality she had worked to produce through correct handling and was now maintaining through consistent management. How many animals do you want eventually? He said. 15 producing females and 2 wethers, she said. At 3 to 4 pounds blanket grade per animal per year, that's 50 to 60 pounds of fiber annually. At $4 per pound, with Ashford's standing contract and the second buyer I'm developing in St. Louis, that's the farm's operating costs covered plus a margin that doesn't depend on weak prices or rainfall. He looked at her with the pale brown eyes that had been doing this specific look since April. Not the look of a man forming an opinion about something he did not understand, but the look of a man receiving accurate information and organizing it correctly. 15 females and 2 wethers, he said. At minimum, she said. The breed literature suggests 20 producing females is the optimal size for a one-person fiber operation. Above 20, the management complexity increases faster than the income. He was quiet for the longest pause yet. Clara, he said. She waited. The fence post on the west line, he said, which I reset in April. Which has been fine since April, she said. Yes, he said. She looked at the alpacas in the pen, at the weather in the shade, the females in the pasture, the 11 months of careful management that had produced 8.5 pounds of 19-micron fiber, and a check that covered the next 6 months of the operation. At Webb at the west fence with the worn brown canvas cap and the pale brown eyes, and the expression that had been developing since the Tuesday after she drove home with 3 animals in wooden crates from Peru. "Come to supper on Sunday," she said. "Not about the alpacas, not about the Kansas City buyer, just supper." He was very still. "Sunday," he said. 5 o'clock, she said. "Front door." He came at 4:50, which she counted. "We're halfway through this story and we want to know, have you ever seen an alpaca up close? Or do you have a memory of working with unusual animals on a farm? Tell us in the comments. Hearing your stories is one of the best parts of making this channel. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect time. We put out new stories every week. The 5 females arrived from Kansas City in October, all bred, crias due in spring. Clara quarantined them from the original 3 for 2 weeks, standard biosecurity for introducing new animals to an established herd, in the separate pen she had built in the east corner of the barn for exactly this purpose. She checked each animal daily during the quarantine period, monitoring for signs of illness or stress, and documented what she found in the notebook. All 5 were healthy. All 5 settled into the Kansas environment without incident. Webb came to look at them on the Tuesday of the 2nd quarantine week. He stood at the pen gate and looked at the 5 new animals with the same systematic attention he gave everything. "They look different from your first 3, he said. "Different color genetics," she said. "The original 3 are all cream white. The new ones run from fawn to medium brown. That's actually useful. Natural alpaca fiber comes in more than 20 color variations from white through black, and it can be used without dyeing. Buyers in the specialty textile market pay premiums for natural colored fiber because it doesn't require chemical processing." He looked at the brown female nearest the gate. "You knew about the color range before you bought them." "It's in the breed literature," she said. "The color diversity is one of the reasons alpaca has market advantages over standard white wool, which has to be dyed for most uses. Natural colored alpaca fiber sells into a different market segment: textile artists, specialty weavers, the natural fiber movement that's been growing in the East Coast craft market since the late 20s. He absorbed this. "You have buyers for natural colored fiber specifically." "The St. Louis buyer is specifically interested in natural colors," she said. "He supplies a cooperative of textile artists who prefer undyed fiber. I've been corresponding with him since July." He was quiet with the quality she had come to understand well in the previous 6 months. Not absence of thought, but the systematic arrival of it, working from the outside in, filing each piece of information in the right location before moving to the next. "Clara," he said. She waited. "The west fence post," he said. "Has been fine since April," she said. "Yes," he said. He looked at the new alpacas, at the 5 cream and white animals of the original herd visible through the east barn window, at the notebook she was holding, at the farm that had been a struggling wheat operation in February of 1934 and was, in October of 1935, an alpaca fiber operation with 8 animals, 2 buyers, a standing contract, and a 3rd buyer correspondence in progress. "I'd like to come on Tuesdays for a reason that isn't the fence post," he said, "if you want that." She looked at the 5 new animals in the quarantine pen, at the operation that she had built from a library reading room in January to this specific Tuesday in October, step by step, each decision documented and executed correctly. At Webb at the gate with the pale brown eyes and the worn canvas cap and the patience she had come to recognize as one of his defining qualities, the patience of a man who waited for things to show themselves before he spoke about them, and who had been waiting since April, and who had now said the thing plainly, which was how she preferred things to be said. "Come for Tuesday supper then," she said, "starting next week." He came the following Tuesday at 5:30, which she counted. He kept coming after that, and the Tuesday suppers became part of the week's structure the way the Tuesday alpaca checks were part of the week's structure. Fixed, reliable, something she organized around without thinking about organizing. The first crias arrived in the spring of 1936, born in the morning as the breed literature said they would be, 5 females and 2 males from the 5 bred females. The males sold to another small operation that had contacted her through the county extension bulletin after the agent's paragraph ran. She kept the females. The herd was 11 producing animals by the first shearing of 1936. The 1936 shearing produced 38 pounds of blanket-grade fiber, cream, fawn, and the 3 shades of brown the new females produced. Ashford took the white and cream. The St. Louis buyer took the natural colors. A third buyer, a textile artist in Chicago who had written in April after reading about the operation in a craft periodical that had run a brief article based on the extension agent's bulletin, purchased the remaining fawn at a price above either of the standing contract rates. Clara wrote the third buyer's check amount in the notebook and looked at it for a moment. Then she went to find Webb, who was in the east pasture checking the new fence line he had spent the previous 2 Tuesdays extending for the expanded herd. She showed him the number. He looked at it. 3 buyers, he said. From 1 paragraph in the county agricultural bulletin, she said. The extension agent's note. Information moves. He looked at the fence line he had been extending, the correct gauge wire, the correct post spacing. The work done correctly because he did things correctly, or did not do them. Clara, he said. She waited. The 15 females and 2 wethers, he said. Your optimal herd size. I'm at 11 producing females currently, she said. 4 more over the next 2 breeding cycles puts me at 15. 2 years. He looked at the pasture, at the herd visible in the far section, the cream and fawn animals in the spring morning, the fiber growing back after the May shearing, thick and even and already beginning to show the density that the 1937 clip was going to produce. 2 years, he said. She looked at him with the pale gray eyes in the spring morning. At the fence he had extended over 2 Tuesdays without being asked to, because it needed doing and he could see it needed doing, and he did things correctly or did not do them. Yes, she said. 2 years to optimal herd size. He nodded once. She looked at the herd. He looked at the herd. The alpacas grazed with a methodical circuit of animals that had found their correct environment and were proceeding confidently within it. Some things took the time they took. The herd would reach 15 females in 2 years. The operation would reach its optimal income in 2 years. And the 2 people standing at the east pasture fence in the spring morning of 1936, looking at what had been built from a library visit and 3 letters and $18 and 14 months of correct management, those 2 people had already arrived where they were going, which was the same place, at the same fence, facing the same direction. The alpacas did not care about any of this. They grazed in their methodical circuit and grew their fiber and were exactly what they were, which was all any animal needed to be, and which was, she had found, also what she was looking for in the people around her. Webb came to supper on Tuesday. He had been coming for 6 months. He would keep coming. The herd would reach 15. The fiber would keep growing. If you've made it to the end of this story, thank you. Leave a comment below and share your memories. Did you grow up around alpacas or any unusual farm animals? Or tell us about the farm animal nobody believed in that turned out to be worth everything. Your stories are what make this community worth building. Subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll have a new story for you next week.